Hi, it's Tarrant.
And Stella from Meeple University.
Today we'll be teaching you how to play the Castles of Tuscany. After this video, we hope you'll be in a position to play the game. Coming up. Let's learn how to play the Castles of Tuscany, game by Stefan Feld and published by Alia.
Let's get to the table.
In the game, players are princes in 15th century Tuscany, starting with just a castle in an empty landscape, and through the game, building up the landscape with different types of hexes in order to earn points and other rewards. After 3 rounds of play, the player who has built up the most impressive empire and earned the most victory points wins the game. To set up, each player chooses a colour and takes the 21 hex tiles with that coloured back, as well as 2 scoring markers and a player board. The hex tiles are shuffled up and then placed face down in stacks of 7 on these 3 spaces at the top of the player board. On the main board, each player places their large scoring marker on the 50 space of the outer green track and their small scoring marker on the 50 space of the inner red track. These are 2 separate scoring tracks for the game. Most of the scores you'll make will go onto the green track, but then periodically be transferred to the red track. You'll see exactly how this works later, but ultimately it's the player with the most points on the red track who wins the game. Above the scoring board, lay out the 8 colour bonus tiles on their higher scoring number 1 side, not the number 2 side. The next steps of setup must be done in the following order. First, shuffle all of the region cards and then deal each player 5 cards face down. Next, deal each player 3 face down region boards, one marked as A, one B and one C, as well as giving each player a dark green double-sided castle tile, and there are only 4 of these in the game. Simultaneously, and without looking at each other's pieces, players then create their region. Players may rotate or rearrange their region boards as much as they wish in order to do this, provided that in the final configuration, the 3 boards are not offset from each other by more than 1 hex. So this is legal, as is this, but this is not. Then each player places the starting castle onto a matching dark green hex in their region. This will be the starting point for your region. All of your hexes will grow out from there, so keep that in mind when placing. Choose a starting player who takes the first player card. Then in turn order, each player chooses one of the 5 different types of bonus tiles to start the game with. There are 5 copies of each, so there's enough for everyone if everyone goes the same way. Choose your tile, place it next to the adjacent space on your player board, and in the specific case that you choose this one, gain 2 green victory points immediately. I'll talk about what each of these does when they come up in the video. Shuffle up all of the white back tiles and then deal 8 of them face up into a common area for all players. Put the remaining white tiles next to the shuffled region cards, yield cards, marble, workers and blue hexes, and you're ready to play. The Castles of Tuscany is played in turns, starting with the player who has the first player card and going clockwise around the table. On each turn, a player takes a single action from the 3 available in the game. These are to draw cards, take a hex, or place a hex. To draw cards, the player simply takes 2 cards, plus 1 for each of these bonus tiles that the player has, from the top of the region deck and adds them to hand. There is no limit to the number of cards a player may have in hand. The region cards represent the different colours and types of hexes that you can build into your areas. To take a hex, choose any one of the 8 hexes in the common supply and then place it onto an empty hex in this area of your player board. You can ignore these 2 green points when doing this action. You've already gained those points as we saw before. If all of your storage spaces are full when you go to take this action, you may still take it, but must discard one of your existing hexes from the game before taking a new one. Then, to finish the action, replenish the empty space in the common supply by taking the top tile of your leftmost remaining pile and adding it, like so. Even though this tile has your coloured back, it is now part of the common supply available for any player to take. If at any point when doing this there are 5 tiles of the same colour in the common supply, then discard all of those 5 tiles from the game and replenish them with new tiles from the white stacks. This is the only time during the game that you'll use the white-backed tiles other than at the very beginning. The third type of action is placing a hex, and this is where most of the action takes place. You can think of this action as having 4 steps. Firstly, moving a hex from your storage areas into your region, then paying its cost in cards, then checking to see if you earn any points, and then gaining the bonus associated with that colour of tile. First, move the tile across. There are only 2 rules here. Firstly, that a tile has to go into a hex of the same colour, and secondly, that a new hex must be adjacent to at least one hex you've already placed. As this is laid out here, the only legal tile to place for the red player would be this orange tile here. But now that that's been placed, the red hex could be placed on a subsequent turn. Next, pay the cost in cards by discarding cards from your hand into the discard pile. Normally, the cost to do this will be 2 cards matching the tile you've placed. But if you don't have the right colours, then you can substitute either or both of these cards for a pair of matching cards of a different colour. So you could pay for the orange tile with these 3 cards, or even with these 4 cards. Next, check for scoring, and there are 2 ways that placing a tile could score. The first is by completing an area, which is any contiguous set of hexes of the same colour on your board. An area is completed when every hex within that area is covered with a tile. So by placing this agriculture tile here, that completes a 1 hex area, which is worth a score of 1 green point. Placing this orange tile here does not complete this area because there is still 1 empty hex. But placing this tile would complete a 2 hex area, which would be worth 3 green points. Completing a 3 hex area is worth 6 green points. The other way to score off placing a tile is if you complete a colour. That is, you fill in your last empty hex of that colour in your entire region. The first player to do this for a certain colour scores green points based on the colour bonus tile, number 1 side, and then flips it over. The second player to complete that colour would gain the lower number of points and then remove this tile from the game. Finally, whether you complete an area or not, you gain the bonus associated with that colour of tile based on this table. I will go through all of these now. The dark green castle tile, when you place it, has the strongest ability. It allows you to immediately take one of the tiles from the common supply and then place it straight into your region, bypassing the storage space. You don't pay any cards to place the bonus tile, and then you score it and get its bonus as usual. Replenish from your player board as you normally would when taking a hex. Placing a red tile allows you to gain a new bonus tile to add to your display. This, once again, will make some of your other actions and effects more powerful. You are allowed to have multiple copies of the same bonus tile, and the only restriction is that once the supply is out of a certain type of bonus tile, you cannot take that anymore. As at the start of the game, if you take the extra storage hex, also gain 2 green points. When you place a blue in tile, the bonus is to take one of the blue wild hex tiles and place it immediately onto a storage space. On a subsequent turn, when taking the place hex action, you can put the wild hex onto any colour of tile, treating it as if it were the colour you placed. That means you must pay the cost to place it, as you normally would, in the colour that you're placing, and you would score it and get a tile bonus exactly as you would if that were a normal tile. The light green agriculture tiles give you additional green points as you get different types of agriculture into that area. After placing an agriculture tile, every type of agriculture depicted which is new to that area gains 1 green point. So this would be worth 1 green point. Placing this would be worth 2 green points because it depicts 2 types of agriculture which are not already in that area. Placing this would not be worth any additional green points because that type of agriculture is already depicted. But since this is a separate area, placing this agriculture tile would gain 1 green point. Note as well that if you're treating the inn's wild hex as agriculture, it always counts as exactly 1 new type of agriculture and therefore 1 green point. When placing a grey quarry tile, the player gains 1 marble plus 1 marble for each of these marble bonus tiles which has been acquired, adding this to any existing supplies of marble. Once per turn, a player may spend a marble to take a second action. When placing a yellow monastery tile, the player draws 3 cards. This number of cards is not modified by any of these additional card bonus tiles a player may have. Placing an orange village tile allows the player to gain 1 worker plus 1 worker for each of these village bonus tiles the player's taken. When taking the place hex action, workers may be spent as if they were a card of any colour, and so this player could spend 1 light green card and 1 worker to place this light green hex. The final type of tile is the beige wagon tile, and the bonus for this is to draw 1 yield card plus another for each of the yield card bonus tiles the player has. These are flipped face up from the yield deck, and the player immediately gains whatever is depicted. This could include green or red victory points, so make sure you advance on the correct track, as well as cards, marble, wild hexes or workers. The game is played in 3 rounds. The end of the first round is triggered the first time a player empties the leftmost column of tiles at the top of their player board. When this happens, continue playing until each player has had the same number of turns, which you can remember by the first player card. Then do intermediate scoring. To do this, players add their current position on the green track to their current position on the red track, advancing the red marker accordingly. That's all that happens in intermediate scoring. Players remain in their current positions on the green track and will continue to score green points on top of it. You'll then proceed with the second round. Some players may still have tiles in their first column, and they will have to clear those out in the normal way before they move on to their second stacks. The end of the second round is triggered in exactly the same way as the first. Once one player has emptied the second column, then continue play until all players have had the same number of turns. Then advance each player on the red track by their current position on the green track. Finally, the end of the third round and the end of the game is triggered when one player empties their third column. This time, you'll play until everyone's had the same number of turns, and then each player takes 1 more turn before the game is over. Once again, advance on the red track by your current position on the green track. Keep in mind the implications of this. It means that any green points you score during round 1 will be scored 3 times. In other words, you get triple the points for doing things earlier in the game. Finally, players gain red points for leftover resources. 1 per unplaced hex, including a wild hex, 1 for each leftover worker and marble, and 1 for each leftover 3 cards. The player with the highest red score wins. In the event of a tie, whoever has the most empty spaces remaining in their region wins the game. If still tied, whoever has the fewest green points breaks the tie. And if still tied, whoever has the fewest cards remaining in hand. If still tied, victory is shared. And that's how to play the Castles of Tuscany. We hope you enjoyed this video and we hope it helps you.
If you find this video helpful, if you can please help us by hitting that like button, subscribe to us. You can also hit the Meeple in the corner to do so and hit the bell icon so you'll be one of the first to know when we have new and exciting videos. You can also follow me on Instagram for my board games journey.
And if you have any questions, comments, or feedback, please leave them in the comment section below.
Until next time.